I'd like to introduce Phil Carlton. Phil is the engagement lead of First 2000 Days Network. Phil has a background in education and early childhood development. His work at First 2000 Days Network enables many to take collective action towards improving early childhood development outcomes. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I don't know whether I feel like TED Talks or Dr. Phil, but I'm going to try and do something a little different in terms of the fact that as I listened to the last presentation, and I think what you've heard from before, there's a lot of the intervention pieces that are required. I'm going to talk a little bit differently. As a catalyst to link, align, and leverage efforts in the early childhood development system to enable collective action to improve early child's development and to support families. Now here's the interesting part. It's not an organization. We do not have an executive director. We do not give out funds. We do not run programs. We are a network. If you have children 0 to 8, if you work with children to 0 to 8, we think you're a member of the network because what you do is really important. Where did the network start? Goes back, at least back to 2012, 2013 when I was working with United Way, and we had an early child development priority team. At the same time, the government had just finished doing a 5-year assessment of how children were ready for school. It's called the Early Development Instrument. It's administered by kindergarten teachers to children halfway through the kindergarten year to determine how they are developing in their 5 developmental domains: physical health and well-being, social confidence, emotional maturity, language and cognitive development, and communication and general knowledge. In 2014, they published their first report. This is what it said. Only 46% of all children entering grade 1 were developing appropriately in all 5 domains. And at least between 20 and 26% of children were experiencing difficulty in 2 or more. What's interesting is, of that 20 to 26%, it is the same percentage of students who are not graduating from high school. And those students who do not graduate from high school are costing us $18,000 a year for their lifetime in cost of social services, social justice, healthcare. You just heard someone talk about ACEs and the impact on health. Absolutely, that's where it comes from. As well, and maybe you heard this morning, and maybe Sarah shared this, 91% of 91,000 Albertan children live in poverty. Our country and province has one of the highest youth suicide rates. Too many of our children have experienced some form of child abuse, and 1/3 of children and youth report being bullied in Alberta, and only 9% of children and youth get their recommended physical activity daily. So what are we going to do? Well, in a way, the First 2000 Days Network is a circle of hope. Because we hope that through our collective efforts, children and families' outcomes will improve. Now on your table, I had to pass out, there's a little booklet. It's called I Am Ready. And there's 3. I don't know which one you got at your table. One is I am ready, I'm 18 months. One is I'm 3 months. And one is I'm 5, I'm ready, a blue book. So when I told you about those 5 developmental domains, what the government did was they gave 100 communities $50,000 to determine how they might look at their community data and develop some strategies and actions. In Calgary, there are 10 coalitions. In Calgary, at the start, 3 of them came together and developed the tagline, the First 2000 Days Network. From that time, and the network has started to grow, those community coalitions have utilized their money very effectively. With support of the network, those booklets were developed. And what they do for each domain, it talks about what does a child need, and what do we as parents and caregivers can do to help them develop appropriately. We want all children to have 5,000 words by the time they get to kindergarten. We want all children to be reading at grade level by grade 3, so that they do graduate, so they do become contributing members to society, so they can read a political pamphlet and decide which party they want to vote for that's going to impact their social life. we need to be proactive around early childhood development. And that's not necessarily the case. So what else are we doing? If on the back there I've listed our website. On the website, there's articles for parents and caregivers and agencies. Things like the importance of play in the first 2,000 days. The importance of creative play in developing children's cognitive ability. The importance of the 24-hour movement guidelines in providing absolute important amount of movement, sleep, and no screen time for children 0 to 2. And guidelines related to that. We hold network nights. We collaborate with partners to offer things like risky play for frontline workers. So it's okay to take the child outside and play in the dirt, and play on the logs, and develop their skills, and develop risk. How else are we going to learn? We've worked with the city to develop the loose parts bins, where it's imaginative play for kids. And it's in parks. They can go, and they can play, they can imagine, and they can be creative. Thanks to people like working with the Office of the Child Youth Advocate, we helped co-convene the National Child Day Collaborative Table. We worked with the Sheldon Kennedy Center. We supported them as they did last year when it was my right to play safe and my right to be safe. Those are important things that we need to do collaboratively together to align our work. We also have worked and signed the Calgary Play Charter and have used that as a way for us to promote play for early years and beyond. If I had known then what I know now, I would have been a better teacher, a better principal, and a better director. Thanks for the opportunity to attend the Alberta Family Wellness's Early Brain and Biological Study Symposiums for 5 years. I understand what our previous speaker was talking about in terms of the brain development. I understand about ACEs and what happens. We understand what happens to a child. We also understand that a child who suffers those 4 or more, the chances are, especially as they move up that scale, that they will repeat them in life. Very much like we're working with the trauma created through the residential schools, and that keeps repeating and cyclical. That cycle will continue. The work of the Sheldon Kennedy Center is so important. The work of Infant Nicole, people like Big Brothers and Big Sisters, who are providing opportunities to support children and families. I think it was one of the first times I heard Sheldon talk, which has resonated with me forever. Asking that question, and as a teacher and principal, I'd be better at it. Asking not is what happened to you, not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. A child does not get up in the morning and say, I'm going to make Mrs. Brown's life miserable today. Something happens by the time they move out of bed and they walk through that school door. And so we need to ask and figure out how we can do that. I know people have shared their story, and as people look at our family, I've got 5 grandchildren. I've been very fortunate in my careers. I've been very fortunate with the people I've associated with. People look and say, oh yeah, well, you got it made in the shade. This looks good. Not necessarily. We've just discovered one of our grandchildren, just starting kindergarten, was being diagnosed with what our previous speaker said, ADHD, which is not an attentive deficit, it's an executive functioning. So we need to figure out how to deal with that. I also know about trauma and those starting the impacts, having lost our son-in-law 2 years ago, leaving behind a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. But that family, we're lucky, we're fortunate. They have that village, they have that circle of hope, that's us. They've grown up with books, they've grown up coming to Mammy and Pappy's, they've grown up going for walks. We're there to comfort them, we're there to provide the support so our daughter can go and heal herself. We're there to support the school as they start to work with our youngest. We're there. What worries me is what about this other child over here, this other family who might have the same things that don't have that. Thank goodness we have people and working like the Infant Nicole, the Sheldon Kennedy Center, those ones I mentioned before. That's really important for that intervention piece to support. But we do need to do that proactive piece as well. You know what, maybe 20, 30 years from now, somebody might ask my grandchildren, who's your hero?
You know what would be neat to hear them say? My heroes were our grandparents. Our grandparents, however that many that is of us, who walked with me, who read to me, who played with me, who let me play, who let me experience risk, who cooked with me. Maybe that's the hero. Maybe you're a hero right now to people you don't know. Sometimes it comes across to you. I had a young man call me and say, "Are you Phil Carlton, who used to be the principal of Dr. Gordon Higgins?" I said, "Yes." He says, "I want to take you for coffee." He took me for coffee and he says, "I'm an engineer with the City of Calgary, and I want to thank you." I said, "What? You were junior high." He says, "I know." He says, "But I run with a bunch of really bad guys in grade 8. And I don't know what you did between June of grade 8 and September of grade 9, but you separated us. And you know what? I made the honor roll when I left grade 9. I was in the honor roll in high school, and now I'm an engineer. Thank you." You don't know. You never know. But what is important is exactly what the previous presenter said, is making those connections. The last little thing I want to talk to you about is just a little thing. Maybe it's my paid political announcement, but it's something I'm passionate about. The First 2000 Days Network has now put their stick in the ground. We have commissioned a position paper, an advocacy paper, that talks about calling on the government to initiate an integrated approach to early child development 0 to 8. And in my ideal personal opinion, that should be an intergovernmental system that is not influenced by whichever party is in power. We should never have to know what is going to happen to our funding or to some of the things that are happening. It is so important. Early childhood development does not resonate as an electoral issue. However, you can connect early childhood to those major issues. If it's poverty, children who grow up in poverty, you've heard. The chances are they're going to suffer adverse childhood experiences which will hinder their development, which will hinder their ability to graduate, which will hinder jobs and employment. I know the number one thing on everybody's mind in here is carbon tax and the pipeline. Well, we can still make that connection as well. Because if we do not have a wonderful place for our children to grow up and live in and experience the outdoors and be able to be successful and have a society that supports them, we won't ever change things. And if you want to talk about mental health, just think about what all the speakers have said here again today. Children who grow up in homes where there are mental health issues are more likely to suffer that themselves, suffer the adverse experiences, which leads to not developing properly, which leads to not being able to get through school, which leads to etc. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I know I'm standing between you and coffee, which is always hard. At least it was better than lunch. But I want to leave you with this one thing that my grandson said when he went to the bus with his sister who was getting on the bus and he couldn't go. And he says to her, "Do a good day." Aww. And when you think about it, do a good day, because it may be just that you can control your day and you can do something good for a child, a family, a co-worker, a friend. Thank you so much.